Welcome to Capitalize Your Finances, the podcast that's your ultimate guide to mastering personal finances and unlocking the secrets of entrepreneurship. Each week, we dive into the world of personal finance and business development and have fascinating conversations with industry experts, seasoned entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their insights, strategies, and stories to help you get ahead in life. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur looking to scale your business or someone just starting out on your financial path, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable insights.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Poniotu, certified financial planner professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And today, we are going to take a trip down memory lane for me, and a very unique memory lane at that, as we are going to talk about one of my favorite bodybuilders of all time, Mike Mentzer, and what he taught me and can teach you about personal finance. Now, you're probably thinking, what in the world is a bodybuilder going to teach me about money or investing or planning? But fortunately for you, I'm going to answer that on today's show, which is actually perfect timing because in a couple weeks, we are actually going to be interviewing two of the top fitness influencers in the world on their business. So it's a nice little tease up. Now, I first want to, before we talk about Mentzer, I actually think it's worth noting a little bit about my story and how I got into bodybuilding. Because frankly, if it was not for my fitness and my health, I wouldn't have any of this. There's no way. Fitness gave me the foundation for all of my successes in life. And I can tell you, growing up, and those of you that have listened in for a while, you already know this, but to new listeners, I've actually had Crohn's disease my entire life. I was diagnosed when I was 4, and it was a struggle for me growing up until I got to about sophomore year in high school. And then what ended up happening was I got so mad with myself that I basically said, I'm either going to die trying or I'm going to become healthy. And I'm obviously still kicking. And I went from becoming obsessed with fitness to really focusing on powerlifting just because I loved lifting heavy things. Then I quickly realized my body can't take that. I'm not 6'8" and 400 pounds of just God-given density. And then I switched to bodybuilding. Since I did that, my Crohn's has been in complete remission. Which, again, I'm not kidding you when I say if it was not for fitness, I would have nothing in my life. Fitness in my faith. Now, I'm going to tell you that, and I wanted to tell you that really quickly because as time went on, and I promise this is all going to tie in. As time went on, I started to learn what worked and what didn't work. And when you're younger, you can kind of get away with anything. Really, with everything. That's not just fitness. You could get away with financial mistakes, relationship mistakes, business mistakes. The list goes on and on. But because I was so committed and I was so locked into the tunnel of fitness, I just kept doing what everyone else was doing. So in fitness, there are all of these popular splits that you have to do. So when I was in college, I would hit every muscle group twice a week. So let's say I did legs on Monday and Wednesday, chest and back on Tuesday and Friday, and shoulder and arms on Thursday and Saturday, and then Sunday I would rest or something like that. And there's a number of different ways to skin the cat on that. I know there are people that hit their entire body Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then they do cardio every other day or something along those lines. And I could also say the same thing with food, because people are obsessed with, hey, 6 meals a day, every 2 hours, make sure your metabolism is at an all-time high, all that fun stuff. But as I was progressing through fitness, and it really wasn't up until I turned 30, and especially when my incredible wife blessed us with our beautiful baby girl in 2023, I thought to myself, and I felt it in my gut, that something needed to change and something was off. Because there are all of these people in the world of fitness that do and they preach all of these things. So you have to hit all of these muscle groups a certain period of time. You have to eat this way. But a lot of these people in fitness are also genetically blessed. I mean, if you think about it way back in the day, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm not taking anything away from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Obviously, he was an amazing bodybuilder and fitness icon, and he's brought a lot to the world. However, you could have made the argument he kind of got away with doing whatever he wanted because the dude was a genetic freak. I mean, he was gigantic. He had massive shoulders, all that fun stuff. And I bring that up because I don't have any of that. I'm not some, Greek god of a man, as much as I'd like to think so. I don't have this just genetic blessing of a build. And so with that, when I was 30, I started doing more research. I kind of rediscovered my passion for fitness. And for those of you that have competed in bodybuilding, I mean, it gets pretty old pretty quick doing the same workouts every day, day in and day out for years on end. And so I just thought there's got to be something. And then the last thing before I mentioned Mike Mentzer was I realized my recovery, it just was not what it used to be. Now, a lot of people say, oh, that's just because you get older. That is far from the truth. Yeah, that's more truthful in like your 60s, 70s, 80s. But 30s and 40s, what happens is you understand your body so well that the quality of your workout basically replaces the quantity. Because in your teens and your 20s, you just don't know your body as well. So it's going to take you a lot longer to get the same amount of efficiency done within your workout. So when I was transitioning into thinking there's got to be another way, this is where I came across Mike Mentzer. Now, for those of you that do not know who Mike Mentzer was, Mike Mentzer unfortunately passed away in the early 2000s due to a genetic heart disease. Not so fun fact, Mike, his brother Ray, and his sister, which I'm blanking on the name, I believe they all died within like 72 hours of the same genetic heart disease. I mean, it's just crazy. But Mike was, in my humble opinion, the uncrowned Mr. Olympia of 1980. Now, and I promise I'm tying this into into finance, because it all does come into play. Mike was, for all practical purposes, the first fitness icon to be canceled. And obviously that term wasn't a thing back in the day, but it's the honest to God truth. And Mike basically comes out of nowhere. Arnold Schwarzenegger dominated in the 70s. And during that period of time, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Joe Weider, who founded Mr. Olympia, they were riding the volume train. So you have to train 2 hours per session, two times a day, 6 days a week, all of these different meals. And with that volume came increased sales for supplementation. More, quantity. So here comes Mike Mentzer kind of out of nowhere. And unlike a lot of people in the world of fitness, or contrary to popular belief, Mike Mentzer was a brilliant man. I mean, he was really a philosopher in a bodybuilder's body. If you go back and listen to some of his seminars, which are suddenly resurfacing, the man was brilliant. And so after he won Mr. Universe, I believe it was that year, only man to earn a perfect score, which is pretty crazy that he was basically deemed to have the perfect body. He's being interviewed for the Olympia. And the reporter asks him, oh my gosh, how many times are you training a week? How many meals, blah, blah, blah. And he basically cuts the reporter off and says, how many times a week or a day? I maybe go in and lift for 15, 20 minutes sessions. And up to this point, I'm only lifting once a week. And you got to understand, in the world of fitness, the reporter was dumbfounded by that. In the interview, you can see he's just shocked by what he heard. So he asks Mentzer philosophically, like, what's the point of that? And Mentzer starts to elaborate on it. And in the background, you can actually see a shadow And again, it's in the 80s, so it's not the best camera angle, but there's a shadow of what I believe is the producer going, cut it. And basically the interview stopped. You fast forward. I firmly believe there were politics involved in the 80s. Arnold came back because the Olympia was dying. Mentzer got pushed off to the side, and kind of the rest was history, unfortunately, with Mentzer. Well, you fast forward till after his death, and in the, I would say, mid-2010s, out of nowhere, all of his teachings start coming out of the woodworks. And a lot of his old clients were coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, I started with Mentzer. I was 130 pounds soaking wet, naturally, without any enhancing drugs. In a year or two, I was up to 165 muscularly. This was my framework, all that. So I started doing more digging, and it's kind of interesting because in 2023, I actually told myself, hey, I'm actually going to try Mentzer's philosophy for my own. And this is where we're going to start to transition into finance through the lens of fitness. So Mentzer's whole thing was, why focus on so much quantity? Because let's just, as an example, let's say you do 4 sets of 10 reps of whatever exercise. His whole thing was, if you're doing that, by definition, you are not maximizing your effort. Because if you're able to do 3 sets after your first one, you're kind of saving something within you, so you're not truly breaking down the muscle. So his thing was, maybe get a warm-up set in, but why don't you just do 1 set of all-out, obliterated intensity? Not only have you saved all that time, in his case, wasted time of just kind of dragging the workout out, your efficiency for breaking down muscle is now optimal. And unlike what a lot of people think in the world of fitness, when you are building muscle specifically, people think, oh my gosh, you have to do all of these things all the time. No, you do not. People get confused with aerobics, so running, sprinting, walking, getting your heart rate up, with anaerobic, which is building your muscle and breaking it down. The reason why people get confused with that is when you're in the gym for 1.5 or 2 hours and you are lifting weights, his thing was you're kind of just blending the two and you're not optimally building muscle. So why don't you get a couple sets in, get out, and as soon as you get out, then you start eating, you start resting, recovering, and that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to result, in you optimally building efficient muscle mass. And I can tell you, I've used this experiment for the last couple months. By no means am I a newbie to the world of lifting. And this is not all muscle, I can tell you, because I started this December 1, and Christmas probably didn't help the cause, but I've probably put on 10 pounds or so. And I can tell you, all of my exercises, all of my lifts that I've taken notes on, have gone through the roof. And it's been years since I've tracked a lot of this stuff. Now, before we transition into the financial side of things, there's one more thing that I want to note. And it's actually the philosophy on rest. And this will be a perfect segue into our commercial and then basically blending everything together. So a lot of these people, when they go and lift, they say, okay, I'm going to lift on Monday. And let's just pretend I'm going to get a really good leg workout in on Monday. Well, people then go and say, hey, I'm just going to lift on Tuesday. I'm going to hit arms. Totally unrelated to your legs. Well, Mentzer's whole philosophy was you haven't rested well enough. Your body systemically is not ready to take that on. It's tired. So then what people would say is, oh, I'm just going to wait till Wednesday because I'm going to be feeling a little bit better. Most people, if you've gone all out, are you going to be feeling better than Tuesday? Yeah, but you're not going to be ready for it. So you just kind of go through the motions. Then the common mistake that people make is, oh, by the time Thursday comes around, I'm well rested. That may very well be the case, but the unfortunate thing with that is even though you've rested up and your nervous system's rested up, you've eaten, your muscle that has recovered because you've broken it down, it hasn't fortified yet. So then by the time that Friday comes around, your body systemically is ready to acutely annihilate that one muscle group. So rest was a huge, huge deal for Mentzer, as well as the quality of food, and then as well as the quality of the workouts. And so what did he do in between all these workouts? He would read a book. He'd go for a walk. He'd go for a bike ride. He would better himself in some other way because he knew that lifting was part of his life. It wasn't all of his life. And so now that you know a brief history of Mentzer, because I could talk about Mike forever, it's time to take a quick break. We're going to head to commercial. After we come back from commercial, we are going to wrap all of this in to how this can apply to your personal finances, your investing, your business, and your overall financial success.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayotou, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back to the episode. Glad we had that break. Now that you've absorbed everything that Mike Mentzer gave the world of fitness, I actually want to tie it in to how Mike Mentzer could teach you about bettering your investing, your overall financial plan, your entrepreneurial endeavors, and your overall financial success. So with personal finance and investing, keep it simple, but not much simpler. So go back to Mentzer, for example, for a second. His thing was all about taking a couple exercises, one set per exercise. Maybe you warm up, okay? I'm not telling you to just go cold turkey and try to just rip off your heaviest lift. That's a great way to snap your neck. But assuming you've warmed up, you take 1 to 2 exercises, and within that set, you completely annihilate that muscle to the point where you know that if you try doing another set, it ain't happening. You don't have it in the tank. When it comes to personal finance, people make it so unnecessarily complex. I've mentioned this in previous episodes, how people say, oh my gosh, I've got this money over here, this money over there. I've got 3 IRAs. I've got a 401k. I've got a previous retirement plan over there. What are you trying to do? You're trying to become financially successful, and you're doing it in an obnoxiously complex manner. Simplify, 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 but not much simpler. What I mean by that is go back to how he lifted. So if Mentzer was doing, let's say, a squat, and he has weight on his back, he's going 4 seconds down, 1, 2, 3, 4, holding at the bottom for 2, and then he's coming up 1, 2, 3, 4, and squeezing at the top for 2. I mean, he is squeezing every muscle fiber in his body to get that movement to just annihilate the muscle. Get in, get out. And I say that because, don't make your personal finances too simple. Keep it simple, but not much simpler. Like, you have to do some work. You have to put in some research. You have to understand where to put your savings, just as an example. But once you understand those bare bones, you do not need to make it overly complex. I will tell you, the more successful you become, the more complex naturally your finances will be. It's no different than an avid lifter. If you've lifted your entire life, you are going to need to mix in different lifts to maximize the return on you building muscle. And by the way, keep it simple, but not much simpler. That does apply to investing too. So a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I need to diversify. I need to have money all over the freaking place. That's a lie. You don't have to do that. Now, I'm not saying keep all of your eggs in one basket. It probably would be prudent for 99.99% of you listening in to have different investments within your portfolio, but you don't need a lot. Joel Greenblatt, who ran Gotham Capital, who earned I think it was 40% over his decade of managing it. In his book, You Could Be a Stock Market Genius, according to, and I'm going off memory here, I'm going deep off memory here. I think it's the University of Pennsylvania. I think as long as you have 5 different companies in different sectors that don't relate to each other, that is an adequate amount of diversification within your portfolio. 5 companies. That's wild. So not only in personal finance, but in investing, keep it simple, but not much simpler. Now, when it comes to investing specifically, so in building muscle, you only need to do what is needed to build muscle and nothing more. And in investing, again, like I was saying for diversification, not only does that mean within the stock market, but let's say you want to get into real estate, or you want to get into private equity, or you want to get into lending, or these other strategies. You don't need, because I actually think there's value there, but you don't need this obscene amount of diversification, not just within your stock portfolio, within your entire portfolio. As long as you have a couple just solid strategies that you have conviction of, you understand, and they continue to perform as long as you're doing the diligence on them, you're going to be great. So with investing, again, keep it concentrated, keep it simple, and those results are going to get you the farthest. Now, and also actually before we move on, with investing is a very forgiving business. This is kind of a quick little side note. You don't need to be right all the time. And in fact, the best investors out there would tell you that they are right, really right, about 25% of the time. They're right more often than that, but as far as being really right, we're talking the home runs, maybe 25%, maybe. Warren Buffett has said over his entire life, 12 investments have made his career. And that dude has made hundreds of thousands of different investments across his lifetime. So probably not even 0.5% of Warren Buffett's investments have made him who he is. But those 12 have obviously made him the greatest investor of all time. So chew on that. I think it's pretty cool. Now, when it comes to personal finance, only concentrate on what matters. So in building muscle, it's obvious. Okay, we've already, put that thing to rest. But in personal finance, it's actually just as obvious. So when you're using shorter term needs and what is available out there, given the unit of risk you are willing to take relative to the unit of time in which you are taking to earn a return, say that 10 times fast, as long as you know what is out there and you know the time horizon you're looking at, that's where you need to go. So if you're saying, hey, I need to save up for a down payment on a home, or I need to save up as much as I can within the next 3 years, what is out there? Keep it simple. And if you've read my book, you know this already. And if you've taken my course, you know this already. Checking account isn't really going to move your needle. Savings account isn't really going to move your needle. Online savings account is going to move your needle due to interest rates. Maybe bonds, money markets, CDs, bond funds, although I that gets a little dicey. Let's say that you're investing for the long term. Now, I like to say long term is forever, but let's say at least 15 years, 10, 15 years. Well, then you know what else is out there. That's where you start looking into stock market, real estate, private equity, lending, hedge funds, all that fun stuff. But when it comes down to the personal finance aspects that we can take from Mentzer, as long as you only concentrate on what matters, don't get cute. Don't get cute. He was not into cuteness. I will tell you, if you guys look him up, my brother actually looked him up when we were on commercial break. That guy's stash is anything but cute. It's legendary, but it ain't cute. Now, when it comes to concentrating on what matters, let's take that a step further. So obviously, if you are saving for retirement and you've got a long ways away until that happens, you've got only a couple options in mind as far as how to invest that money, but that's okay. And when you are about to retire or you have retired, we just need to understand how psychologically the game changes. Because your goal isn't to accumulate more money. It's to live off of what you've saved. And so then what you do is you focus on just that. And I mentioned a lot of the short-term strategies that we talked about earlier. Again, CDs, money markets, bonds, to name a few. I talked about the long-term strategies. One thing I didn't talk about, if you're about to retire or you have retired, is the value of annuities. Whether they provide you an income, they give you a guaranteed return in a couple of years, maybe over a longer period of time. It's not guaranteed on the total return, but you can't lose money on them. The point is, as long as you keep it in as simple as possible and you concentrate on what matters, that is what you can take away from Mentzer in the world of personal finance. And the final point, I'm kind of bummed this episode's actually gone so fast. I could talk about Mentzer all day long. I loved that guy. The final point in personal finance and investing that we can learn from Mentzer: ignore the crowd. I love this one. Ignore the crowd and do what is right, not what is popular. So I'm going to read that again for you. Ignore the crowd and do what is right, not what is popular. So go back to when Mentzer was competing in the 70s. First off, bodybuilding was the Wild West at that time. And it was also interesting because it was kind of in its, I don't want to say it was in its heyday because they call it the golden age of bodybuilding. But, Venice Beach was where everyone wanted to be in the world of fitness. You had all these bodybuilders working out basically all day, all the time. Great looking guys, beautiful women, beaches of Venice, an amazing gym. It was kind of just paradise. And so if you didn't fall into what everyone was telling you, you were kind of looked down upon. And I can tell you, when I was getting into fitness back in the day, it wasn't even a question of, should I work out 6 days a week or every day? It was just, you do it because that's what everyone did. And man, I wish I could have gone back and thought about why. Why are we doing this? Because it wasn't necessarily right. And certainly wasn't right for me. And whether it was food, supplementation, you name it, I took them, okay? A lot of them were just garbage. And workout splits or, the next best exercise or superfoods, which is just a total bunch of hogwash. It was one of those things where I was trapped in it. And I wish I wasn't. And Mentzer was not. Now, Mentzer got canceled for it. I mean, he kind of just fell into the darkness of fitness. And, to his credit, he took it with grace, and he was an amazing personal trainer. And he actually went on to basically, be the motivation for a lot of these future Mr. Olympias that came into play, like Dorian Yates. There's rumors even about Ronnie Coleman, things of that nature. And again, that's beside the point. But he always stuck to his principles. And I'll tell you, you look at the guy's body, yeah, he was a genetic freak, but he did a lot with it. Because I've met a lot of people that are genetically gifted, and they do squat with their bodies. And they just kind of tear them down and tear it apart, which is super sad. When it comes to fitness, it is about slowly and methodically building and bettering your body for years. And that is no different than personal finance and investing. No different. A lot of people try to get rich quick. Stupid advice. I have never, ever met someone that has come into my office that got rich quick. It's not a thing. And for those of you that think you can get rich quick, if you are the select few that do get rich overnight, you can lose it just as fast. But if you work methodically and prudently over years, it's probably going to take you that long to lose it. And if you've built in all of these great principles, you ignore the crowd, you ignore the noise, you put your head down and you do what is right, not what is popular. I'm not supposed to say this in the industry. You can't really use the G word a ton, but I guarantee that you will be successful. And so, keep all of that in mind. Keep your diligence about you. Ignore just BS noise out there. Figure out for your finances how it optimally works for you. Keep a concentrated group of people in your circle, no different than Mentzer. And as long as you do that, the sky is your limit. So that actually does it for today's episode of Capitalize Your Finances. And I've been really excited to do this episode with Mentzer. Again, I'm a fitness guy at heart. I love fitness. I do love finance. And let me know if you like the blend of these things. If you really do, I could do a series on what Arnold taught us with Frank Columbo or Frank Zane, all of the greats in the world of fitness. And who knows, we may even get into athletes if you wanted to. So if you found value in this episode, first off, thank you so much for listening in. Head on over to capitalizepodcast.com. Not only can you listen to this episode in previous episodes, you can also look into our books, our online masterclass, soon to be books and online masterclasses, which will come out later this year. And then lastly, if you are interested in becoming a guest on our show, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com, shoot us a message through that link, and my team and I will try to get back to you as fast as humanly possible, generally within 48 hours. And then lastly, if you have questions about your own personal financial situation, or you want me to answer those questions on the show, that's where you go. Capitalizepodcast.com. Shoot me an inquiry, and I will do my best to answer as soon as humanly possible. As always, I'm your host, Chris Frey-Panayiotou, Certified Financial Planner Professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing. If you have questions about today's episode or any personal finance questions, please reach out to me at Cap and Capitalize on Instagram, Chris at capitalizeyourfinances.com, or via our website, capitalizepodcast.com. If you want more Capitalize Your Finances content, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com and check out our blog, free resources, book, and online course. As always, I'm your host, Chris Frey-Panayiotou, Certified Financial Planning Professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing.
The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. Different types of investments and/or investment strategies involve varying levels of risk, and there could be no assurance that any specific investment or investment strategy will be profitable for a client's or prospective client's portfolio. Thus, investments may result in a loss of principal. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. This material was gathered from sources believed to be reliable. However, its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. This material should not be considered a solicitation of an offer to sell or buy any specific security or offering. Investors should consult a financial professional to determine whether risks associated with an investment in the shares are compatible with their investment objectives. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Diversification strategies do not ensure a profit and cannot protect against losses in a declining market. Before investing, carefully consider a mutual fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. To obtain a prospectus or summary prospectus which contains this and other information, call your financial advisor. Read the prospectus carefully before investing. It is important to keep in mind that investments in fixed income products are subject to liquidity, interest rate, financial, inflation risks, and special tax liabilities. Annuities are long-term investment products designed for retirement purposes. Guarantees are based on the claims-paying ability of the issuer, subject to their terms and conditions. Early withdrawals may be subject to surrender penalties, and if taken prior to age 59.5, may be subject to an additional 10% federal tax. Annuities are not FDIC insured. Certain terms and conditions apply, so please read insurance company materials carefully. CDs are FDIC insured up to $250,000 per depositor per insured bank for each account ownership category. Christopher Paniotu is a registered representative with, and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Capitalize Your Finances, a separate entity from LPL Financial. Mike Mentzer and any other individual or company mentioned in this podcast are not affiliated with Capitalize Your Finances or LPL Financial.